That alone, verse 93. To one detached from the changing body, nothing is more dear than his self. As the self-oriented value continuously remains in this state, the self is eternal. Commentary. In verse 12, Narayana Guru called our attention to the aspect of our being that is of a perishable nature, namely the body, which is constituted of skin, bones, and various kinds of dirt, as well as the many fantasies of the mind, which have no lasting value. He contrasted this with another aspect of our being, which persists throughout our life, the witnessing consciousness, which identifies itself as the occupier of the body and the master of the bodily instrument. Age does not cause any change in it, even as the body grows old. Despite intermittent lapses of awareness, such as when one is in deep sleep, one does not feel any disruption of its continuity. Alluding to this, the Guru said that when the body perishes, the consciousness that pertains to this persisting awareness will ultimately unfold itself into total perfection. The same theme now returns in this verse. A contemplative is capable of withdrawing the mind from objects of interest and those bodily elements, such as the senses, where particular experiences of pleasure are found. When one withholds attention or withdraws from the bodily aspect, the mind doesn't totally lose interest. For instance, when a person is sick, many attractions are disregarded for the time being. Life itself is more valuable than anything outside, so one forgoes the sense interests as being of little consequence. A child may show great love for a doll it has, but if you show it a new one, the novelty of it attracts the child's mind and causes an automatic detachment from the object to which it was previously attached. The mind is removed from its previous interest to a new one. In the shifting of interest, the child doesn't know that the value it was seeking in one object has been shifted to another, because the value always resides in the self and not in the object. When the mind shifts its interest, it has no awareness of devaluing something and promoting something else. But in effect, we can say the person no longer cares for this or that. In the life of an open society like this one, we can always see that a certain person is endeared very much by another. Pledges and promises are made, but when bitterness comes, that person is no longer dear. All the promises are void. They find interest in some other person. What actually happens is that nobody is loved for their own sake. It is for the priyam, for the happiness of our own self, that we get into situations of endearment. In the immediately previous verses, Narayana Guru conceded to the transactional world whatever value can be allotted to it. From the existential point of view, he gave a relevant placement to whatever is ontologically real within the frame of reference of a relativistic world. Then, in the same frame of reference, whatever teleologic processes are going on were also recognized. After giving the transactional world what it deserves, he is now calling our attention to the transcendental state of the self. He cites value as the most significant factor to explain both the existence and timelessness of the transcendental state of the self and its infinite eternal nature. All the Upanishads emphasize the same aspect at some point. From the ephemeral, the attention of the aspirant is directed to what is eternal. The manifestation of the world is always explained in the Upanishads with the help of the 5 elements, which have within them a gradation from the most concrete to the most subtle. Earth is the most concrete, while water, fire, air, and akasha, or space, are increasingly more subtle. When you become individuated, you have within that individuation the concreteness of a physical body, which is apparently separating you from all other objects and bodies in the existential world. But the vital principle is not confined to just one body. For instance, when you nourish yourself with food, the vitality of other bodies interpenetrates and is incorporated into your body. If you have the eye of a contemplative, you can see that a stream of life is continuously flowing through you. Your own priyam, your own desire, is instrumental in how it is channeled through you. You desire food and you partake of it. Its nourishment is essential for you to retain your individual existence. You may not recognize on a daily basis that your love for food is a love for the perpetuation of the self, but in effect it is so. Of all instincts, self-preservation is the first and last. Everything else serves to aid in the preservation of the self. The food you eat, the water you drink, the sunlight that nourishes you and gives you energy, the air you breathe, the emotional affinity you have for other people, plants, and animals, your intimacy with others, all these make dents in your concrete individuality. The external world flows into you, and you flow into it. An ex-osmosis and an end-osmosis are taking place whereby you become part of the world, and the world becomes part of you. For all this, the operational dynamics come from priyam, desire. In the preservation of the individual self, there is a bright aspect which is the cream of your consciousness and can be called the intellect, and also a dark aspect, an autonomous, unconscious aspect that maintains the integrity of the physical organism and the harmony of the mental functions. These are symbolically known as Indra and Prajapati in India. Your life is afloat in the river of timelessness. A beginningless and endless stream of phenomenality is flowing along, and you are floating in it. You have a powerful urge to preserve yourself, but you know your body won't last forever. One way you can do something about it, though, is by making progeny, by having your own children. Then you are passing your essence on to the offspring. Even biologically, there is the preservation of part of your being through the continuation of progeny. This has been going on for time immemorial, and it will continue for at least that long. Although there are many impediments in the stream, and it looks as if the organism might be broken up and dissipated by any number of physical and psychic events, there is one element which surmounts all obstacles and which is always victorious. When a sperm couples with an ovum and the cells begin to multiply in the mother's womb, There is nobody there to help its growth, but there is an urge to grow. The urge is not a conscious one. The embryo has to overcome many difficulties to become a fully developed child, ready to be born. Birth itself is a very dangerous thing, sometimes requiring outside assistance, such as in a caesarean section. The urge to grow and persist is continuous. We can think of the embryonic urge as the beginning of a long and victorious march. Yet, while it looks very much like the beginning to us, we should not think it is the real beginning. The real beginning goes back at least billions of years to the start of the first formation of stars. If we take it all the way back to the Big Bang, the question arises, the Big Bang of what? And why and how? Even now, physicists are beginning to suspect that there might have been something preceding the Big Bang. There really is no beginning. A beginningless urge becomes evident to us when a helpless child emerges from the womb and emphasizes its needs with a loud cry. It needs to breathe, to be nourished, and to be protected. Often we only look at the external symbols and events. The Guru wants us to know there is an Atmagata Priyam, a dear value which is most central to the self, and that it never breaks, never comes to an end. The Upanishads speak of the self as aparajita, the one which never concedes to any kind of defeat, which is ever victorious. The victory of the self, which continues its path by desiring one thing after another, is aided on the one hand by Indra, the devices coming from the intellect, including conscious planning, and on the other hand by Prajapati, the autonomous and unconscious artifices. You are manipulating the situation both consciously and unconsciously, so that you can always move ahead. Part of the process of moving ahead includes coming to this realization that there is a larger situation to which you belong. Then you enter into the apprehension of Vibhu, that which was there, even before it was manifested. In his Symbols of Transformation, Jung speaks of plunging into our childhood memories. The child is the beginning, the womb from which the adult has come. So the adult sinks back into the womb of childhood. Through childhood memories and dreams, you reach the other world, which was present prior to your individuation. From the world here you enter into the world beyond. The Upanishads speak of this as entering into the great hall of Vibhu. In one sense, we can say the child has the mind of the beginning and the mind of tomorrow. Yesterday and tomorrow are bridged by the child's mind. When you alienate yourself from the unconscious, you also become alienated from the total ability of both the autonomous and the pure intellectual functions. You begin to live in a contaminated world of relativism. It is in that contaminated world that we have chiseled out a niche we call the transactional. The Guru is trying to help us to get back to our original state, so we can reclaim the whole to which we naturally belong, rather than getting stranded on the desert island of the transactional. When we find our way to the hall of Vibhu, we are given a throne to occupy. The throne is called Vichakshana, the reference being to one who is capable of discerning right from wrong, true value from the imaginary value of fancy, and who is endowed with the dexterity, the expert ability, and the know-how to reach the full potential and bring it to fulfillment, rather than pursuing fantasies and facing frustration. If you are not capable of directing the right desire towards the right object and of employing the right method to realize it, then you cannot keep up what is expected of you to be an aparajita, an all-conquering person. When you enter into the world of Vibhu, that which exists prior to manifestation, you are supposed to win and not to fail. What is prior to manifestation is the causal factor, and what you see here are the effects. If you do not know the cause, then you do not know how to deal with the effects correctly. To understand the tree, you should know both the roots and the branches. This study is a way by which you are guided from the branches back to the root. Your tools are a resting place and a continuous supply of energy, the Amita Ojas. The continuous Ojas can become discontinuous. The libidinal energy with which you are supplied and through which life has been persisting is beginningless, and it can be endless too. But one should know how to conserve it and when to use it. Although its source is the self, when it manifests, it becomes bound by the limits of the body. There it can burn out. In disciplines such as yoga, great stress is placed on the transmutation of ojas, the libidinal energy, for higher purposes rather than just wasting it. At a gross level, it is identified with the sexual fluids and energies that are often expended for pleasure. This idea can be exaggerated so that it becomes a spurious or puerile understanding. But if it is understood properly, the Amita Ojas becomes the Brahma Tejas. Ojas is like fuel, and Tejas is when that fuel burns in splendor. This can be either a temporary power release for the gratification of small desires, or an intelligently directed exercise which can produce an effulgence like a torch of light blazing through time, like the simple glow of wisdom on the face of the Buddha. How many thousands of images of the Buddha have been made just to try to capture that inward smile, that embodiment of serenity. Such radiance is called the Brahma Tejas, and in that form has become a priyam of the whole world. Everyone is endeared to the serene gaze of the Buddha. The individual self has two consorts, Manushi and Chakshushi. It is like a man with two wives or a wife with two husbands. Manushi is the desires of the mind, and Chakshushi is the desires of the senses. You should be able to tame the mind and the senses so they will appreciate the higher value, which is the value of the self. What they should desire is union with the self, rather than the fragmentary images that come and go. But the mind distracts you, repeatedly showing you the small ephemeral images and urging you to hug this shadow and that shadow. You try to catch them, but you always encounter frustration. You burn out the Chakshushi, dissipating your energy through the senses. The world you make for yourself is considered to be a garland strung by Manushi and Chakshushi with the flowers of values they pick up. Your life is a big garland, a mala, of all the pains and pleasures gathered by the mind and the senses. The mind takes one little pleasure here, and the senses pick another little pleasure, and they are strung as an ananda, an endearment. Then the mind brings another, and the senses bring another, in an endless quest. In the Kaushitaki Upanishad, a certain mantra is given, which has often been misrepresented as a kind of magical spell to be used to obtain the affection of someone desired. It has quite a different sense if you understand its spiritual import properly. You build a sacrificial fire and offer butter into it, calling out the name of the person. Then you chant, "The light of your eye I sacrifice in myself. The light of your ear I sacrifice in myself. The light of your fragrance I sacrifice in myself. The light of your touch I sacrifice in myself. The light of your thought I sacrifice in myself." You take the essence of the other person and sacrifice it in the flame of your own self. The spiritual meaning of this is that the fulfillment of any desire is a blending of whatever essence or value you see in a thing with the essence of your own self. The attempt at blending is to be considered the alchemy of the sacrifice, where you burn out your individuality and the individuality of the person or thing you desire. You transmute your desire to the pure ananda of the self. This same idea is presented in many different forms. There is an old story that focuses on the greatest of all desires. Once a seeker went to Indra and did something that pleased him. Indra said, "Ask a boon." He replied, "Whatever is good for me, you can give that as a boon." Indra said, "It is up to you to choose what is good for you. Whatever you ask for, I will give you." The seeker protested, "I cannot make such a choice. You are the all-knowing one. Please tell me what is good for me and bestow that as a boon to me." Then Indra said, "Desire me because I am truth. I am the truth of all things. I am the truth that is established in the heavens. I am the truth that is established in the atmosphere. I am the truth that is established on earth, and I am the truth that is established in the Netherlands." The omnipresent truth, Satyam, is the most desirable. Narayana Guru says the desire which never leaves the self is desiring the eternal truth that manifests everywhere in all forms. However different it may appear in its forms, or by whatever name it is known, you should always go beyond the form and the name to realize it as the one truth and desire it. This idea is presented in yet another way in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. There a person is called a Nara, an individual. What we see in our wakeful consciousness is the whole world. If we picture the whole universe as being a single entity, a Vaishvanara or cosmic person, that one person is enjoying everything. The hunger in each individual is considered to be a function of the hunger of this world spirit or cosmic person. As the cosmic person is full of desire and is living in all of us, we desire to eat in order to appease its hunger. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says, "O Lord, I see you with a million mouths. All forms of life are always searching for nourishment, and through their countless mouths the cosmic person is ever eating and drinking." Then Arjuna says, "You are all legs and you are all hands. You are millions and millions of eyes." When you stop to consider it, the individuality of each item of desire cannot stand apart. It is all the total desire of the Vaishvanara. At the manifested level, phenomenality itself is a process of desire fulfillment, and your life is nothing more than a participation in that process. At the same time, the plurality of your desires can be unified into one single desire, the desire for the self. Again in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Yajnavalkya says to Maitreyi, nothing is more desired than one's own self. More than a son, more than all wealth, more than anything you can think of, the self is the most dear. The collective aspect of desire is thus given great importance. The Bible gives an example of this idea in the parable of a man who has 100 sheep and one of them is lost. He doesn't think, I have 99, so I don't care. The sense of loss is felt if even a tiny part is lost. Natarajaguru used to say, the discomfort that comes to you on not finding a pin when you need one very much is the same as when your mother dies. Mother is a most dear value, and her death is upsetting and inconvenient. But you suffer the same kind of inconvenience when you can't find that pin when you most want it. These examples are calling our attention to the significance of the totality of the desire manifesting in its individual aspects. Even though the singled out value is a relative thing, compared to the totality, you cannot say it is nothing. It is also to be seen as part of the Absolute. The way the Absolute manifests is through each individual desire. In the desire you can see the mark of the Absolute. So all desires are to be seen in the Absolute, and the Absolute is to be seen in each desire. Of all earthly pleasures for human beings and other animals, the one that most excels is when a couple in the deep embrace of love, experiencing orgasmic ecstasy. But the Upanishads say that experience is as nothing compared to the coupling of the cream of your intellect with the self in the cosmic embrace. When that happens, it is as if you have all the embraces of the world. You are in eternal union. It is this eternal union with the self that you should see reflected in all other forms of embrace. It may be just the eye caressing a flower, or the finger giving a tender touch of loving care, but you should be able to see in it the coming together of the essence of your own life with the totality. The individual essence and the cosmic essence merge into one another. What pulls these two together is desire, a priyam or endearment, but it is that which brings you to the ultimate release, the absolute perfection. In this verse, from an ontologic ground, the teleologic finality of the soul's search is brought to its complete perfection. This is a man's highest path. This is his highest achievement. This is his highest world. This is his highest bliss. And the free translation of verse 93 is as follows. To one who has withdrawn all interest from the changeful body, nothing is more dear than the self. As this love for the self never diminishes in anyone, it should be known as the eternal.